Hi, it's Will from StormTheCastle.com, and this is the latest installment of my Medieval America series where I travel all around America visiting medieval sites. And in this episode, we go to the great state of Maryland, small state, and the city of Baltimore. And I was really pleasantly surprised by the things here. We're going to take a quick look before we do it. First, we're going to look at a cathedral that is just absolutely magnificent, and look at the color of that stone. That is a rare stone, and in this video I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, tell you what it is and more about the cathedral. And then we're going to go to what I consider to be one of the best museums in America, the Walters Art Museum. It's not one of the most expensive, they don't have the biggest budget, but they are magnificent. I love this museum. And then we're going to finish off this video with a little bit of fun, where I go to a medieval times in Baltimore. So let's do the introduction and then let's do Maryland. Oh, welcome to Maryland. Okay, so Maryland, about the landscape. It's really nice. I enjoyed Maryland a lot. It's a small state. The landscape is very nice. It's very New Englandish. A lot of cow country, which I was a little bit surprised to see. A lot of rolling hills, a lot of green grass, and gentle landscapes. Overall, I like Maryland. I did run into some pretty good weather, though. We had some rainstorms while I was there that were pretty harsh. I had to at one point pull over on the highway. But you know, this kind of thing happens because I've spent a lot of time on the highway in my trek around the country. But let's head into Baltimore. And we are actually heading towards that building. That is the Mount Vernon Place United Methodist Church. Let's take a closer look. Now, here's the thing about this. Isn't that something? How often do you see something like that? This church cathedral was completed in 1872, and it's made of 6 different types of stones. The rarest of which is something called a green serpentine metabasalt. That's what gives it that green tint. That isn't moss. That's the actual stonework. And it's a rare stone, but it's also rather sensitive in terms of stonework goes. It's not the most durable of stones. So the church slash cathedral does have to get work done to it on a regular basis, and it needs work because the stone does deteriorate. But look at that, and see that window there? That is modeled after the famous rose window in Notre Dame Cathedral. And you can see the difference, but look how the stonework is. See the green and the different types of stone, and see how some of it is eroding away. Well, it's been 150 years, but very, very unique coloring, very, very unique Victorian Gothic cathedral is what it is. So I really love it, and the day I arrived, it was closed. So I couldn't go inside, which was a little disappointing. But still, I could walk around outside and look at and admire the stonework and the structure of it. Like I said, you know, Victorian Gothic is a little bit rare. And inside was one thing that really I wanted to see were the pews. But anyway, so now on to the Walters Art Museum and in Baltimore, and I love this museum. At first, you're like, "Hey, here you go. There's a museum. It kind of looks like a lot of other museums, you know." And you might say, "Hey, it's like many of the $100 million museums." But I went to this one specifically because they have a really nice display of medieval and Renaissance arms and weapons and stuff. Look, see the pole arms and suits of armor and stuff like that. Right, very nice. But this is a smaller museum. You know, like I was saying, it's not like the Met. But they really do a magnificent job here. And I was surprised to see a gun shield. This is only the second one I've seen. But here we go. Typical museum stuff. And I don't mean typical to say it was mundane. You know, very beautiful. But they also have a focus on the 17th century Flemish Renaissance, which never really was a big fan of. I didn't really follow it, but now I'm a convert. I love the 17th century Flemish Renaissance. But kudos to this museum for the magnificent job they've done. Uh, I I just love this place. If you're anywhere near the Baltimore area, stop in. And by the way, it's free admission. But there are two things. See that ivory case, ivory chest. There are two things I want to talk about when it comes to this museum that make it very, very special. And in terms of the 17th century Flemish Renaissance, which is now is like Belgium, but they have something called a collector's study or a studiolo, which is modeled after what they had then. Like the wealthy people would have something called a collector's study or a studiolo. And I just was really, really struck by this because it's a place where a learned person, would do their studying, collect things from the world that were important in terms of, bettering yourself in terms of science and learning about the world. And see, it's a studiolo. And like I'll show you a few different things, like busts of famous philosophers or scientists, and a desk where you can work at and study at, and various things like these various timepieces. And let's take a closer look at that one. That is actually a sundial, and I'm thinking I might make that as a project. That's really rather interesting. But a studiolo or a study, I just it really struck me a place to go. So when I build my castle, I'm going to have a studiolo, and of course books about nature and science and philosophy and learning. So there was the studiolo, and they have one in the Walters Art Museum. So uh, really, really worth a look to go in and look around and take your time. And along the top, there's a bunch of portraits of famous scientists, philosophers, and even people from somebody's past. And then now the other thing here is something called a Chamber of Wonders. And this is another 17th century Flemish thing. It is a room for guests to come and visit where you keep wonders from the world. And I just thought that was just amazing. If you're a person of the world where you travel and you explore and you bring back things from different parts of the world, and you keep it in a chamber of wonders. And they have a chamber of wonders here in the museum. See, like that is a narwhal tusk over the painting. And I think that painting is the seven wonders of the world. The whole bunch of just remarkable things, like in this perpetual motion machine, just wonders of the world in a room. So I really was struck by the Walters Museum of Art, the Walters Art Museum, and I consider it to be one of the best museums in the country. It's not $100 million museum, but they do a magnificent job in terms of finding their niche and staying true to what a museum is supposed to be. And admission is free, so if you can go there, I recommend you go there. And so that's it. So now we're going to do one more thing. The Baltimore has a medieval times, so let's head on over to that. And I just was want to give you a little bit of footage of a portion of Baltimore here, and it's really beautiful that I found with these tree-lined streets with a lot of grass and these beautiful homes. It's very upper middle class suburban areas of the city that I really like. Overall I liked Baltimore a lot. But let's. This is at a shopping mall, a medieval times at the mall, which was a treat. So of course I booked myself a seat so I could enjoy the show, and we'll look at the show, and I'll show you a little bit of footage of it and what it is. And if you've never been to a medieval times, it's a franchise, and they have them in different places around the country, and a lot of fun. But see, now we're inside, and what you end up going into the arena and sitting like this, and like this seating, and you get yourself a meal, and there's a chicken and potato and tomato soup and corn, and then you watch a show. And the fun thing about it is the sections of the stadium are color coded. So you sit in a certain section, and you have a night that is color coded to your night, so that is your night. So you root for your night, which is kind of cool. And they'll have a bunch of pomp and circumstance, and then they'll have some jousting. And of course, they'll have some nice hand-to-hand combat, and it's pretty well done. I really enjoyed it. But let me be quiet here, and we'll just watch a little bit of these combatants. And I think one of them there has a mace. Looks like we've got a two-handed sword and a mace, or is that a hand and a half sword? Leave a comment if you can recognize those weapons. If you've ever been to a medieval times, then you know what this is all about. You've never been to one, it's well worth a visit. And now he brings out a halberd, right? So the whole thing plays like a story, and eventually one knight is triumphant over them all, and and that's it. So I enjoyed the medieval times dinner. It was a great couple of days in Baltimore, Maryland, and now we are on to the next place. And the next video, I'm pretty sure, is going to be Washington D.C. It's not very medieval, but the Smithsonian Castle is there. So, and we're going to take a look at Smithsonian Castle. I'm looking. So, you might want. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.